undisclosable location for reasons of security and therefore insecurity. Come at the hour, come at the mothership that is Ark Midnight. Welcome aboard, Ark Riders and Caravanners. We're going to have a very interesting conversation tonight with the one and only Dr. Richard Allen Miller. He is something else, he really is. And there's just not much telling as his mind is spiraling ever upwards where we might land. You know, I wish this subject matter could be a little more pleasant, innocuous, benign, friendly, kind of like Beatle music, you know, always friendly, sometimes even nice. But alas, it's just too weird for that. We'll tea party later. But in the meantime, I'm sure you've heard by now, a new study reveals up to 5.7 million illegal aliens voted in the election. I wonder if they were Russian. Probably not. I'm thinking maybe no. And then it's the usual with Fukushima, no attention paid by the Ministry of Smoke and Mirrors, but we pay attention to it because it's important. You've heard the reports that absolutely everyone on Earth has been irradiated to a greater or lesser degree. I'm thinking greater in Japan and much less down at the Arctic Circle and the Antarctic Circle. But you never know. I'm not a student of water currents nor wind currents. I just know that they exist. So, I want to thank everybody for being here in advance. I want to remind everyone that Ark Midnight is made possible by the members of Caravan to Midnight and nobody else other than the Lord himself. And thank you very much for that. It's good to have a mission, but it's even better when people join the mission. Otherwise, you just sit there by yourself seeking relevance, and somehow the only thing you come to realize is your own irrelevance. But with the Caravanners, there is relevance, and the truth is getting out. Notice the panic. Notice the panic as more and more things. Oh, an independent investigator has determined that the Seth Rich murder was not a random homicide. You think? Well, that's genius. But look, better slow to get to the party, better a little bit late to get to the party than to not arrive at all. And so, we carry on doing the best we can to bring the truth to the world. And the Caravanners and Ark Riders are all around the world, and it's a beautiful thing. Now, how about this? Don't you find it interesting that some guys from Wales decided to run over some people at coming out of their mosque after prayers during the Ramadan observance? And it's interesting how much play the poor victimized Muslims got. So much more than their Christian counterparts, if I can say counterparts. Yeah, I'd say counter is the operative part of counterparts. Yeah, definitely. And it's, they're so peaceful, we don't understand why this would happen. This is my message to the Muslim community. You may regard your observance of the religion of Islam as peaceful. Your book says otherwise. And you may want to proselytize your religion in furtherance of drawing in as many people as possible. We notice a lot of, wingnut, nutcase, lost Hollywood types have decided to convert to Islam. But here's the thing. As far as the peaceful Muslims out there, you're not doing enough to alter the image that your religion has. I cannot think of another attack by Caucasian, probably Christian men against anyone of the Islamic faith. Other than 2-3 weeks ago, there was somebody who was harassing, a couple of people were harassing a woman, and this young man intervened, wound up getting himself killed. We have to figure out what's compatible and what isn't in our society. It's all right to accommodate everything as long as there's a little of it, the old moderation in all things. However, when you're faced with an invasion, I'm thinking the most intelligent thing to do is to recognize it as an invasion and stop it. We can't tolerate an invasion here because, I remind you, if America goes, the rest of the world will soon follow, right down the drain situated under the toilette. Are we clear here? I think we probably are. Now, you know, Bezos, Amazon king, you know he has done massive amounts of work for CIA. And you know now he's bought Whole Foods for 13 point something billion. And now those people, the employees of Whole Foods, are now concerned that they're going to be replaced by robots and drones. And most assuredly they will be, because that's the only way to bring down those prices. So we're going to cover it all, and we're going to get into this and ever so much more with Richard Allen Miller, Dr. Richard Allen Miller, when we return. Strap in tight. We might hit a little turbulence, maybe even a little wind shear. You know what wind shear is? Wind shear is when wind is blowing from all different directions right on top of your wings. Stand by.
You're listening to Ark Midnight with John B. Wells. Now, here is John B.
All right. If you are a regular consumer of alternative media, it is written here. The name of physicist Dr. Richard Allen Miller is likely quite familiar. In the past few years, he's been interviewed by many, many people. George Norrie, Vinnie Eastwood, Mike Harris, Kerry Cassidy, Veritas Radio, Red Ice Radio, Henrik Palmgren. I haven't spoken to him in a while. We might ought to hook up with Henrik pretty soon. And, well, in the broad strokes, Dr. Miller is a Piscean, which is really good because that means he has the mind of an analyst and the creativity of a true artist, right? At least that's the reputation of Pisceans. He is a legacy Swiss Mason, holy bloodline, holy grail of the Nelson line. It is written here. The lodge to which he belongs was formed in 1480 to protect the bloodlines of Christ. His mother and grandmother were famous psychics in the Seattle area, and the television show One Step Beyond was based on their work with the Seattle Police Department in the 1930s. Dr. Miller's scientific genius flourished early. During his junior year at Mount Rainier High School in 1960, he won the Navy Cruiser Award with a new Mason field theory, and in 61 he created a linear accelerator and hydrogen bubble chamber and was, according to him, the first American to create particles going faster than the speed of light. He later studied physics at the Washington State University and the University of Delaware, took courses at Princeton and MIT, taught graduate courses on metaphysics at Harvard through IES Humboldt when PC Link first became AOL. Now, while he was at Washington State University, he built a plasma jet subsequently used by Giannini to make space tiles. He jokes, sort of, that several professors were afraid he was going to blow up the campus. And then he went to Boeing. And then he went into Mankind Research Unlimited. And the fact of the matter is, I could take up the entire program and all of the time that we have allotted to speak with Dr. Miller just talking about what he's done in the past. So he'll get us caught up. And in the meantime, we'll make sure that his information is, regarding his background and so forth, is made available to you. So without further ado, before I get really crazy with some of this stuff, Holographic Concept of Reality, let's just talk to Dr. Miller. Hey, Dr. Rick, good to talk to you again.
It's wonderful. Thank you for thinking of me. Yeah.
You know,
need the book sales.
Well, you need the book sales. Well, yeah. Let's just see if we
I'm
can
a starving artist. It is terrible. We got hacked after Amazon started bootlegging my books in June. I have physical evidence. The lawyers we hired were setups. They abandoned us right when we were going in on Lightning Source and CreateSpace. We had them cold, and they abandoned me. Mm-hmm. I'm left out on a limb. It's not even about money, probably. There's something else going on. I'm clueless. And the fact that I can't figure it out over almost a full year now would suggest something else is going on here, like an AI, something smarter than me. I don't know. What I do know is I had to go back to work. I'm doing. I'm a raw material supplier out in the woods. I have labor that collects, fir boughs and greens and pine cones and whatever, and I've had to go back to doing that. It makes good money. It would have been a lot cheaper for whoever's hassling me to just put me on payroll and put me up on top of a mountain, being like a Quaker, living a quiet, simple life. I would have loved that. What I've got now, I didn't sign up for, and it's creepy, and I have no idea what it all means yet.
Well, I'm a little disappointed to hear you say that, because I was just about to tell you, for the last few days, it has felt just generally downright creepy, and I don't really know what other word to use. It's just I'm just being creeped out, mostly by what I detect intuitively, but I can't really put my finger on it. But I don't have to put my finger on it, because I can put my mind on it, if that makes any sense. It's just I've never seen so much deceit just running through everything.
Everything. That's absolutely correct. You don't, and now, for me, I'm a nerd. I'm not a spook, and so now I'm looking at shadows. Who's who? What's what? I don't want to be like that. I'm a farmer, and I want to be out in the woods and enjoy life. I don't know what it means. I'm watching road rage going to a whole new level in rural towns. It used to be Phoenix. You could tell what the temperature was by the road rage. That's all changed now. Now it's getting down into craziness of people pulling weapons on each other. Someone will cut someone off, and the other guy will start to go pumpy on his bumper, and the other guy will pull a gun, and it escalates from there. And who's got the bigger, canazo? It's crazy. And I'm going to guess that some of it is that we are most likely being terraformed right in front of our eyes. And nobody is coming forward. Like, I'm pretty smart. What are chemtrails? What exactly is their purpose? Well, I have all kinds of possibilities, including the lithium they deployed in Reedsport to lock down a small city. But what is, if you take a flashlight in the middle of the night and shine it up in the air, what's that floating in the air now? I don't know. I know mucus. I know that in the Midwest, farmers are always smart and see things before almost anybody else.
Yep.
And they have just mentioned there are no more ants, and the flies are disappearing around the pigsties. Why? Well, the light from the sun has already been vetted that it's different. When I was a kid, the sun was yellow.
That's right.
And what would cause the sun to change? Well, Stanford and Caltech had this contest to discover who can find planet 7X first. Oh, there it is. And out came the thing out by Uranus. There was a new planet out there. Where did it come from? And then all of a sudden, there are 7 of them out there. How does that work? Now, I don't know what that means, and I don't know what Nibiru and all this movement with directed energy beams with Jerry Wood and all the rest of it. It's all, we have technologies now that the public does not know about yet.
Yeah.
And they're deploying them with plausible deniability. And I can try to Occam razor the thing as an old armchair physicist because I don't have my toys anymore. If I had my toys, I could be precise. I'm using time-domain reflectometry now to see who's listening on my line. I send a little ping down the thing with my oscilloscope. He's half a mile away. I can do that. That's what they did last week. They came in and reset my protocols and got rid of my Wi-Fi. And yet, go down a half a mile from my home and turn on my computer automatically and the camera and the sound port. Boom, just like that.
This doesn't surprise me in the least. But my question is,
purpose?
well, I mean, you're a very interesting man, But
No,
wait a minute.
No.
What makes you so interesting?
Men.
No, what I mean is, what makes you so interesting that they want to do this to your computers?
I think there's enough supercomputer they can do it to the first 20 million people. That's where I am in the list. In other words, I'm no big deal. I'm just part of the wave. And it's happening to all of us, and some of us are noticing it, and others haven't picked up on it yet.
Okay, well, I was hoping for a little bit more flat. You know, I can't help thinking that...
I don't think I'm that big a deal. I really, John, if I were, one of the Quora is a thing where high school kids can ask scientists questions, and then we try to respond. And Quora, one question was, what makes Stephen Hawking and John Feynman more important as physicists? And the response is they're not. The real ones you don't hear about because, like Green and those guys are in laboratories doing things, and Feynman and Hawking are very good at explaining on a lay level. Well, Johnny, it works like this, Mr. Wizard from my year. And really, there are physicists out there that I worship. I mean, I'm a good guy, but Jesus, I know people that are better, and know it. And, or at least in my humble opinion kind of thing. And and there's nothing original. That's why the Nobel Prize is always shared with 2 or 3 scientists from different parts of the world, because it's archetypal. Like anything else, if one person has got an idea or a meme, it'll be happening over there as well. It's not ESP, but there's a kind of a networking on what constitutes archetype and making you human over a machine. And so there are levels of edges that happen. And so I have no illusion that I'm no big deal. I've, at least from my metaphor way of looking at the universe, I don't think I'm that big a deal. I don't. I'm polymath, yes, I can do things, but what I can do, anybody can do. In fact, I've never been number one in anything I've ever done. Never.
Yeah, but the thing is,
I didn't win the National Science Fair. Robert Strom did with his UNIVAC.
Right.
For example. Yeah, then You're getting the big picture. That's how that works. And I was doing Cherenkov radiation with my linear accelerator. Today, they call that Bremenstrahlen. And the meson that you were talking about and the muon is now an elementary particle, where at the time I did it, it was about creating a tachyon factory so you could beam these particles down on Mars and measure the amount of water.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's take our little break and pick up right there where we leave off, okay? The interesting thing is, you may not be interested in being surveilled, but surveillance is very interested in you. You may not be interested in warfare. Warfare is very interested in you. You may not be interested in civilization and social structure, but those structures are very interested in you. And that is why we do Caravan to Midnight, which can be found at caravantomidnight.com, and this program, the terrestrial adjunct, Ark Midnight. At least if you know these things, then it's up to you to follow them up or not. We'll be right back with Dr. Richard Allen Miller. This is John B. Wells speaking. You know, Dr. Miller mentioned Occam's razor a while ago, and Stephen Hawking writes in A Brief History of Time, we could still imagine that there is a set of laws that determines events completely for some supernatural being who could observe the present state of the universe without disturbing it. However, such models of the universe are not of much interest to us mortals. It seems better to employ the principle known as Occam's razor and cut out all the features of the theory that cannot be observed. Well, I'm not a tenured professor, but I think that's maybe a little risky. We'll continue with Dr. Richard Allen Miller in just a moment. Please stand by.
The question is, do you really want to know? If you do, join the Caravan to Midnight at caravantomidnight.com. Now, more Ark Midnight with John B. Wells.
All right, you know, a lot of people think that that's Jimi Hendrix that was doing that song there because it sounds very Hendrixian, don't you know? But that was actually Arthur Lee. I think I've told this story before. I was driving a 66 Jaguar E-Type through East Fort Worth, back in the John T. White area before it got really weird back there. Anyway, there's a lot of country roads. You could actually pretend you were in England. And this song came over the Pioneer Super Tuner. And I thought, oh, man, what is this? That's not Jimmy. It sounds like Jimmy, but it's not Jimmy. And nobody at the zoo knew who it was. They didn't even know who Arthur Lee was. But I found out, and I played it for you. Of course, you know, it's 35 years on, but I still played it. So we continue with Dr. Richard Allen Miller. Dr. Rick, about this Occam's razor, and I popped off and said, you know, if you just want to take out all the features of the theory that can't be observed, what kind of a theory do you have left? I mean, is Occam's razor really something we should stick with, or is it just a cute talking point?
It's the most logical.
Is it?
Yeah, but that logic isn't what this movie's about, and so now we've got a problem, Houston.
Carry on.
And that's the truth. That's the truth of it. I mean, Occam's razor is really good right up to you got to step outside the box for a minute to get the bigger picture. And when you do that, you have to make assumptions and definitions. And when you do that, that's what gums up the works. Your defined, your assumed truth. The shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line.
Yeah.
Well,
not always.
To certain kinds of algebra, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you say, no, space is curved, now, using certain kinds of math, you could prove everything else is flat, including the Earth. But it's not, because if you look at it this way, then this becomes a reality and explains those data. But if you look at it this way, that's all hunky-dory, and my ship just sailed off the edge. Well, I mean, you got a choice there. It's just like, is it half full and half empty? Physics is not any more real than religion. In fact, that's the lodges we were talking about earlier. The idea of the method of science toward the aim of religion. And that's what pathworking and trying to sort out why you're here is all about. And it's going to be a bumpy ride, because the more you know about one thing, using a quantum universe, the less you know about something else. Because that's uncertainty principle. And then you have the one where something's looking at you or you're looking at it, like the ghosts of Mars.
Yeah.
And so, you create your own maggots. Let's talk about poltergeist, for example. We have a friend that is currently in a home that's haunted, literally. Some violent death. What happened next was some of the so-called structured water in a microtubule was not allowed to go home, gets trapped in matter. Now, there are entities, this is a way of looking at things, doesn't mean it's true. There are entities that are like maggots that feed off dead parts of your soul. And you have dead parts because you're renewing just like you are your hair scalp, as a metaphor. And so it creates a whole new way of looking at what's going on with haunted houses and the fact that there are such things as chiggers and Alabama ticks. You have to be very careful in this new world, because imagination is reality. That's the truth of it.
It's almost as though you have to inject some of the illogical into your logical thread of reasoning to discover anything new. Is that?
Well, that's why you have two brains. It's a cavitation process, and the past going into the future like an hourglass. Your brain is exactly the same cavitation and the way you store memory. And that's why time isn't real. It is a duration of consciousness. It's the way you store the memory or event. And what we're trying to do, ultimately, is to go from the profane into the sacred. Good luck.
Wow.
That's basically a one way of looking at the star system's binary, or galaxies of binary. There's a big black hole up there, You know, someone wanted to know what dark matter is, you know, in terms of its relationship to antimatter. It's not. It's different. And there's all kinds of things going on. I believe the author that I like best that wrote a book on that called Alan Dean Foster wrote Into the Out of. That's an interesting book. Cavitation processes. It's our whole foundation now for cold fusion, exclusion zone water, and the idea of membrane physics and parallel universes. And when you have like a drop of water that hits itself in a pool, there is a change when the water drop pops back up out of the water from the point. That's because the inner waves, the outer waves are your, you know, when a drop hits that thing, the outer waves are your future timelines, and the ones that go inward create a closed caption ball, called a bubble of exclusion zone water with a toroidal topology inside, which wrapped with air. And these cavitation balls were known in submarines. You know, you could identify one sub from another by its cavitation signature, like you do a fingerprint. Each one is slightly different in the way it turns through the water. Yeah. All these little bubbles falling behind it. And that is a metaphor for what is going on with consciousness. That's a new model. And then instead of using string theory, the direction now is from Kaufman and knot theory, you know, plasmas, and the way they would tie into a bowline like you did Boy Scouts. Different ways space is joined into itself. And I don't know where we're going with all of this, but these are models, and like all models, there's limitations. They'll open these doors, but it won't let you go into those doors. Now, the one we're using today, a holographic universe, is going to allow us to conceptually change the movie. That means, how did John Lennon put it? I love John Lennon. He said, everything works out in the end. If things aren't working out, it's not yet the end. There's a beginning, a middle part, and the end part. And what you've got is the moment. And the way you remember going into time travel, where you're going backward in time, is you're taking your brain, which is basically the upper brain, is a amorphous semiconductor. It's like changing liquid crystal, and what you're doing is trying to put it back in the same moment when you had the experience. And when you're doing that, that's time travel. And when you work with your gut and you have this instinct of 5 things in front of you, and that one right there, that one's important to me. That is a future timeline talking to the moment. And if you can somehow integrate this, that's called the evolution of consciousness, where you're taking the profane into the sacred, where the duration, it becomes more timeless.
Oh, boy.
I thought you'd like that one.
No, that's good. No, that's good. I like that.
Yeah, but it works in terms of, if you choose that, that's why all your religious texts said God, you were God's favorite, because you had choice. Is it half full or half empty? You have an option.
Oh boy, that's very interesting. Let me ask you something. This is kind of a wild swing, but not much of one really, since the distance between 2 points is not necessarily a straight line. Let's throw a curve in here. What is happening to the mentality of people in general? Are we suffering from information disease because everything is being reported to us, most of it or a lot of it in real time, but even you knew that kid that got stabbed that was trying to defend those I guess those Muslim girls. That was the incident, wasn't it?
They were all coming home from school from Reed College.
Yeah.
There's a tram that goes from Reed College to Portland. One of the girls had a veil, was just sitting, a young kid in school, but was a Muslim rather than, I don't know, Hindu or whatever.
Yeah.
And this individual was a skinhead, but he wasn't really, because I live in KKK land. Trust me when I tell you, he's doing more harm than good. And so it's a shill. And I posted on internet what's called Portland Decoded. That's a good one to watch. That place where they're using creepy people, crazy people for nefarious purpose and spin, what you called counterintelligence, lying by omission, misdirection, like Alex Jones and NBC. Like, it goes on and on. It's about credibility and the fact that to experience the American dream, one must first be asleep.
Mm-hmm.
And most people do not even get it. Because see, the one I just posted about food has become a weapon of mass destruction. Because there's a picture in the first lecture where it shows the kids in the 50s, and now what they look like today, same ages, with Beaver and Cleaver and his brother. Now, I'm going to tell you something. They're using food as a weapon and why everybody's obese. And if you don't think our children are not going to have a diabetes problem, it's crazy. And we're being set up to fail. Twiggy comes to mind, and Barbie dolls. And the whole thing is a type of concerted, directed intent. And it's crossed all borders and all levels of the hologram. That means spiritual, emotional, intellectual. They're getting at us at all levels. And while all of this is occurring, oh, look, children, they're beheading ISIS over here. Look, children, over there. Meanwhile, we're being terraformed right in front of our eyes. I mean, strange creatures are showing up because the ocean currents are changing. How is that possible?
I don't know.
I don't either. And if I don't know, what do you think that suggests? Okay, page 17. It goes downhill from there. And I am knowing that knowledge is like illusion. And that's why in the Tree of Life, Daath, D-A-A-T-H, the missing Sephiroth in the middle of the abyss, is a temporary place. Knowledge through wisdom. You're only there for a brief moment. And that's why Castaneda, others have always suggested that reality is that which cannot be known. You only can experience it like God. You can't know God, you can experience him.
Interesting.
That's kind of the difference between having rights and responsibilities.
Yes, I suppose so.
And so man, right now, has a responsibility for the thoughts he chooses to entertain. And there's all kinds of creepy, viral-like memes, bacteria, molds, that are feeding off astral and intellectual parts of yourself that are dead inside yourself because of the way you were born or whatever. I remember when I was born, which is quite different than the way a dog is whelped and a litter of love. The first thing they did is they hit me, took me out to fingerprint me, and then chopped my penis off. That's what I remember.
Damn it.
Circumcision. And I'm tired of it. The way we're born coming into this world is barbaric, and no wonder everybody's messed up.
Well, you put it that way, yeah.
Well, I mean, okay, that's Steve Gaskins and The Farm out of Tennessee. And I remember a time when, before he wrote that and was still at Berkeley, and he was writing about Monday night class and spiritual midwifery and the way a child is brought into this part of consciousness. There are tribes that, in my opinion, are more evolved technically than man that would suggest that consciousness has less reality than certain dream states. And that's Senoi and the Jungian Senoi dream manuals of Stephen Kaplan Williams. Now, it's a metaphor in the way we try to understand that the more you know, the more questions you have. Isn't that an interesting observation? Mm-hmm. And the fact that information and theorem states that you have enough information to ask a coherent question. You have enough information to answer it. And it started with Gregory Bateson, and led to what we call cybernetic anthropology with Laughlin, D'Aquila, and McManus, which later became the transhuman movement, and the idea of algorithms and qubits and the way an artificial intelligent computer might work to be distinguished differently than binary and or a not. I remember Corning was building computers using puffs of air before we got into monolithic circuits, and that was called NOR-NAND logic. And that place, it's neither this nor it's that, and that means you had one less variable you could put out, and that's what's called object-oriented software or squill language that later led to the things that we're doing now with Actor 4.2, with DBase and that kind of array of information that is strictly a machine. Now, while they can go to universes that we can't, it is also true that a machine doesn't feel pleasure when it beats you at chess. And so here we are trying to understand where we belong in this food chain. Yeah, it's a food chain, trust me. I've watched orca chase dolphin for food, and both of those mammals have bigger brain cases than man. So read it and weep. And I don't know what it all means yet, but as far as I can tell, I'm looking up at the sky and the sun and the temperature and the weather and the food, and something's going on here, Mr. Albert. There's your Beatles song again.
Mm-hmm. We're so sorry, Uncle Albert.
Mr. Albert.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it means yet.
This is a potentially frightening, but an extraordinary time to be alive.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. And
opportunity comes to mind. That's a good key word.
Yeah, absolutely. And
opportunity. And elite are no longer, and it's not about money, and we have an opportunity. What are you going to do with it?
Now, what is this? Let me ask you something. What's the deal with pyrosomes and this invasion of the ocean by strange little creatures? What's going on there?
I have no idea.
But do you know that it's real? This is a real thing.
I got tuned in just a few days ago.
Yeah.
And here we are with strange sea creatures and UFOs. Did you like that whole video I sent you?
Yeah, I did like it.
Didn't have time, yeah. The end of it, after it does all those sea creatures, goes into some infrared. If you have infrared goggles, you can watch some creepy things going on up in our upper atmosphere that does not make any sense at all. Now, infrared, real infrared, not near infrared, what they call... what is that, near infrared? It's like, it doesn't shoot a target out and get back. It's not a two-stager. That is very expensive equipment, and someone had that, and it's filming UFOs that people can't normally see. There they are. What's going on? I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Well,
but I know that our military has been reverse engineering things. I know for a fact that Boeing has a magnetic monopole. I know that many times what are reported by MUFON and others are simply reverse engineered technologies that the public doesn't even have a clue yet. And then they'll talk about Fermilab and, before CERN and Mandela effect. Sandia and Bell Labs have been there for a long time. I don't know this game that these people play with Mandela effect and that kind of thing, trying to suggest alternative timelines being changed. That multiverse concept is what I'm writing about now in my writing. It's interesting.
Yes, it is interesting, and I'll tell you, the thing is that if you'll just bring us up to speed, and many people know what you're a little bit about your background enough to go, okay, well, we want to listen to him definitely, but just bring everybody current with what your involvement was with.
You mean sustainable lifeboats? Lifeboats with oars? Yeah. No. Well, what can I tell you? I have been doing some very strange conferences recently. They had me go speak as a keynote speaker and celebrity at a major comic convention, and I'm being billed as the real Dr. Strange. That's because I've been in lodge work since 1970. I've been OTO. And I'm speaking to European lodges and other kinds of things because it is the new direction of physics. As physics is about to change, just like alchemy changed into chemistry, in our pharmaceutical houses. Now, physics is going through major changes and becoming magic. Magic, with a K, is the art of changing consciousness at will. You got legerdemain with a sleight of hand, and magic might be referred to as a sleight of mind. Now, let's explore that concept briefly. How is it that a young woman watching her child burn in an automobile can rip a steel door off and not break her bones? How does that work?
I don't know.
Well, but you know it happens, don't you?
Yeah.
And so there's something where her bone is stronger than steel, or her strength is that of an ant, where she rips the car door off. Okay.
Sure.
What we're talking about is altered states of consciousness, where we used to think that consciousness was this place that we're currently enjoying, which, by the way, could be likened to a light sleep with nightmares. That's a good way to look at it. Now, with that said, all these different altered states, of which I've written a book on one of them, specifically an altered state brought in with forms of hypnosis, will increase your ability in guessing 400 times. That's one of the first protocols I did with Navy SEALs, intuition. And when you realize that when you go into these different altered states, you can do things in these states that you can't do in a conscious state, just like our physics models.
So you actually shift. This can be observed by other people, but you shift your own consciousness, but it doesn't. With
intent. That is correct.
Yeah.
And you use your brain, your upper brain, the one they call the mind, as a tool rather than an absolute, this is where it all happens. It doesn't all happen there. There's heart and there's all kinds of the liver and the triple warmer.
Amazing. All right.
The upper brain is there to make all your beliefs true.
Your upper brain is there to make all of your beliefs true. I like it. All right, let's do our break, and let's come back and let's pursue this with Dr. Richard Allen Miller. I'm John B. Wells in for the Saturday night ride up to the midnight hour here on Ark Midnight. Where else can you hear Arthur Lee anyway? Stand by, we're going to do a little bit of news and so forth, and we'll get right back into it when we're done. I was just, during the break, I decided to step out for a minute and give myself a lung treatment. It protects me from the after effects of ionizing radiation and air pollution and so forth. And I was observing a little slice of American culture. And I have to tell you, as depressing as this may sound, I suspect you may have thought of this yourself. When I look around and see 300-pound people with skin heads except for a shock of, shocking blue, I see all of these people in the various activities, these girls with these tattoos wrapped around their arms and all this stuff. I understand fashion, and I also understand style. Fashion is just what's going on at the moment. It's the spirit of the times, the zeitgeist, that you display openly. But then again, there's style. And when we behold all of this violence, all of this profanity, people would consider some of the things I say on this program, Ark Midnight, by the way, thanks for being with us, to be a little racy, but it's nothing as racy or severe as what we see going on in the over the public airwaves through various media channels, specifically news channels and the The violence that's depicted, I mean, you just can't get enough. They can't make it violent enough. I used to think that head crawling along with the spider legs come off of it in Carpenter's Thing was bizarre. Well, that's nothing compared to what's going on now. And I'm afraid what I'm witnessing is the collapse of a civilization. I think we'd better tighten up pretty soon. I think we're on a very, very short timeline to decide how we're going to think, what we're going to believe, how we're going to prepare for our future, and how to divine the future and determine what it's most likely to be and get ourselves in line. And that's why we say, make ready for what's to come at caravantomidnight.com. I hope that you will become a member of Caravan. We are entirely member-supported, and therefore we get to explore and talk about whatever we wish without external constraints, externally applied constraints, either through the corporation we work for or the sponsors that somebody that we don't know arranged to sponsor us. We do it ourselves. Stand by. More with Dr. Richard Allen Miller in just a moment.
An arc of rational thought traveling through the void of vacuous content and opinion. Ark Midnight with John B. Wells. Once again, here is John B.
All right, thank you very much. As we carry on, Dr. Miller was just saying that the higher mind exists to make our beliefs come to life and be true to us. Or am I close now?
Yeah, it's there to. I wouldn't have seen it if I hadn't have believed it.
Right, I get you.
Yeah, it's there to make your beliefs true.
Or maybe even if I hadn't believed it, I wouldn't have seen it.
There it is. That's another way of going half empty and half full.
Yeah. Leads
to the same glass.
Wow. I don't know if you heard what I was saying, but you know, just looking around at the way people just go through their lives, just observing them. I mean, I feel like I'm looking at an ant farm. Remember when we were kids, we'd get an ant farm.
Yeah.
You know, and you've got this group over here, and they're well behaved and they're fairly well dressed, and they're conducting themselves, you know, in a traditional, what I would like to believe is a traditional and somewhat conservative manner, meaning they're not making asses of themselves out in public. And then I see this other group of the culture that's like almost like a breakaway civilization. They have decorated their bodies, you know, in these bizarre ways, and they're punching.
Club.
Yeah, I mean, they're
Breakfast Club. That's what we're talking about here.
Yeah, I mean, they're cutting out most of their ear lobe and stretching it out and putting these giant, you know, silver dollar sized brackets in there, and I'm just going,
African tribes do that, you know, and Indian tribes used to use bones and feathers. Man, gee, it's Aborigines, teeth, and power objects. I just wondered what they were going to do with the bodies after they're dead, is make drums out of them or something.
Something like that. Well, you know, here's the thing. I remember, you remember Alvin Toffler's Future Shock. And,
yes.
You may have seen that movie that Orson Welles narrated. They were talking about, you know, and back when I saw this was like 71 or 72, and I think it's more like 71. And you have people with red hair. I mean, like red. I don't mean like traditional red hair, like a carrot top. I'm talking about red like a fire engine. And they got blue hair, and they got green hair, and all these bizarre things. And all of these things came to pass. All of the stuff that Orson was narrating, that Toffler had written about, these things have come to pass. So now you have this renegade section. I mean, they're trying to set themselves apart, but much like the hippies did, they were all trying to be individuals, and yet they all pretty much looked alike, from the hair to the clothes to the patchouli oil to the weed to the music, you know. And now I come across this thing from RT. And again, I say, I received a message from beyond, and I did. And it is read Russian publications. And I'm thinking that when you go to RT and it says 7 in 10 Americans have a great deal or fair amount of confidence that the U.S. government can protect them from terrorist attacks. A 15-point increase since the massacre in San Bernardino, California in December 2015. Now, this is a Gallup poll, so take it with a softball-sized grain of
saw
salt.
that one too. I did too.
Yeah. So, do you believe this? Confidence, the governor's protection ranged from 73 to 82% under Bush, around 75% under Obama until 2015 began to slide to 67%. Confidence dropped sharply following the San Bernardino attack. But now we're starting to hear stuff out in the mainstream, and what I mean by that is generally it's accessible to the general public. 71% of the people polled in this thing that came out of the UK, they consider themselves citizens of the world and really want a global government power that can force nations to deal with things like pandemic disease and climate change. Okay.
Paris Accord.
Yeah. I don't believe it. I mean, do you think...
I know. It's plausible deniability. It's kind of like when Lightning Source or Create says, well, we're just publishers. I mean, we're printers. We don't care what we're printing.
Is that what it is? That's excellent. Plausible deniability from the media.
Yeah, and downward from there. Whatever happened to Charles Kuralt and On the Road, where he did a warm fuzzy on what was going on in America that was wonderful?
I don't know.
Yeah, I do. I've got the whole picture. The media has now become a weapon, just like food is.
Just like what?
Like food.
Food as a weapon, yes. It's disturbing.
Yeah.
It didn't escape my attention that you were having some trouble with, dare I say, the name Amazon bootlegging your books. And you're not the only one that's happened to. Now we know that Jeff Bezos and Amazon were, and probably are continuing to operate this huge computer analysis apparatus for CIA, which means that, and I read this thing by John Rappaport. It's unbelievable. He wrote that, so you're buying your food from Amazon. No, oops. From CIA. Oops, no, wrong. From Whole Foods. So
it gets worse than that. How about Monsanto just got bought out by Bayer?
No.
Yeah. And now it just happened. And so now what you have are Nazis and fascism as opposed to democratic. And there's wars going on levels I don't get because I'm a nerd. I just go into a science room and turn on my machines and climb into them and have fun. The world is crazy now.
I'm telling you.
Yeah. And they have computers. Okay, here's one that happened recently. The Mossad in Israel arrested 400 Palestinians for future crimes.
For future crimes.
Just like in the movies that happened.
Okay, now get this, folks. Get this. This is from Rappaport, all right? John Rappaport. When Amazon boss and billionaire Jeff Bezos bought the Washington Post in 2013, and we know the spin that outfit puts on everything, he also had an ongoing $600 million contract to provide cloud computing services to CIA, which means the Washington Post, which already had a long history of cooperation with CIA, renewed their wedding vows with the agency and doubled down on the alliance.
Counterintelligence is lying by omission.
Yes.
That's the difference between intelligence and counterintelligence, and knowledge and wisdom.
Wait a second. I got to hear that again. That's good. Counterintelligence is lying by omission.
Yes.
And what is it?
In other words, they're not telling a lie. They're just not telling the whole truth and nothing but.
Well, now let me ask you this. What is Dr. Richard Allen Miller's definition of counterintelligence? What does that mean, counterintelligence? That means like anti-intelligence.
You misdirect by giving you a few facts, but not all of them. Kind of like what's happening with NBC and Alex Jones. That's going to be an interesting one to play out. I'd like to see how that actually goes with Sandy Hook. We could talk about 9/11. That's in the news again, trying to discredit Judy Wood, others. And it's okay because Judy Wood is not a scientist. She's an educator, but she's not a scientist per se, and so she's trying to grasp something that is easily blown up. Now, is she wrong? Well, it's kind of like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. There's, because if they can discredit someone like Alex Jones, then it doesn't matter what he has to say and his proofs. And so he's being sued by, the parents are against children of Sandy Hook. And yet we know that Sandy Hook as a school had been closed for a full year. How does that work?
Well, that to me is absolute nonsense, although...
Okay, let's talk about 9/11 and the fact that there are weapons of mass destruction now that are being deployed everywhere that the public at large has no clue. And when I say that, most MUFON people think they're seeing UFO, and it's actually reverse engineered American aircraft or whatever. Now, I remember when Byrd went down to Antarctica and got his tail waxed with 3 sunken ships, and they first encountered Foo Fighters. These are the little drone things that move around quick, and somehow like our drones are today, and jet fighters, which we didn't have back then. We had turboprop, but we did not have jets. And there's actual filming footage on that one. And then, of course, in the 50s with George Adamski and Wayne Aho and others, and the filming around Mount Rainier and these unusual spacecraft. Are they real? Yeah, but that doesn't mean they're alien.
Oh, boy.
It goes downhill from there because you're never probably ever going to really know what happened in Antarctica last year and recently. I have friends from JPL that talk to me about that. When I was in Antarctica in the 70s, I saw the Nazi bases there. That was in the history book. And why is the public not being disclosed on that now? Further, I saw a Viking base from 14th century. Now, that means that this facility has been known through centuries, not just the Hellfire Club. And then there were some tunnels that went down 100 miles, way deeper than we had in the 70s technology to go. And yet there's this massive thing where several famous astronauts and heads of state went to Antarctica to somehow witness something. And then just 2 months ago, there was a mass evacuation of civilians off that continent. Why?
What do you mean? What'd you hear about that?
Well, one of them woke up. What happened is we now have technology that they were able to go down those tubes. Now, 100 miles down in the mantle is plastic. That means such high pressure and temperatures that the rock becomes plastic. And we could not, even back in the 70s, understand how that technology could exist.
Rock became plastic.
What I heard was some Nephilim were discovered in stasis, and we have current Nephilim. And I have done recent movies with BBC on the head that was discovered in Pennsylvania in the 1860s. There's the photographs. And went to the Smithsonian. It's missing. And I'm going to say some things about that. Was an easy one to vet, but we have Bigfoot. We have Sasquatch. We have Skinwalker Ranch. We have phenomena of evidence of other kinds of life forms on Earth that we don't understand. The one Jim Morrison talked about crossing over to the other side, it's a type of life form that doesn't die. And that medicine man from the Hopi that died in the crossroads is what made Jim Morrison the icon he was. And there's a book called Secret and Suppressed by Feral Press. And Tom Lytle wrote about the untimely death of Jim Morrison. He did not die, and apparently the Swedish Secret Service ushered him out of Paris, where he was supposed to have died. And I didn't believe any of this, and I got some letters. This is back during when I was doing my vetting things for the military. I got letters from a laser company out of Louisiana. There they are on CIA letterhead. And there's Jim Morrison's signature. And I went back there, and there he is, Fat Jim Morrison, because there are certain kinds of life forms that don't die like we do. Now, I don't understand how this all works. I just know that we've got a history. Whether or not Afghanistan happened and that giant that got shot by a bunch of GIs, I don't know if that's real. I do know the one in Romania is. And that was a lost crew that went in after that giant and didn't come out. And I'm going to tell you that with Bigfoot and our other legends, there are things going on in this world that are not being disclosed to people like you or me. And the thing that bothers me the most is that I have not met very many people that are smarter than I am, and who makes those decisions for my best interests. And that part is what disturbs me the most, and is what Aleister Crowley called Liber Oz. And that's what's happening. And it's happening to you, and it's happening to me, and it's not right, and you know it in your internal gut. There it is. And yet, there's nothing you can really do about it. In fact, there's a high likelihood you're never, ever going to really know what happened. That's what this state of consciousness is about. We're in a dream state, and we don't have a clue. And I am going to start talking about how to wake up. And when I say that, the word I'll use is path working, where you have a goal and you have purpose. Intent is similar. What literally happens at the end of the day. However, if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing right now, then you are, John, for example, your voice is beautiful. If you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, none shall say nay. Now, you're not in conflict with anything, including New World Order, whatever. Now, I'm watching what's going on with the so-called Illuminati. I remember what the Illuminati originally were in history. They were the Jesuits for the Church of Rome. They were the scientists, like, Sean Connery in The Name of the Rose. They're the ones that went in, illuminated, and tried to solve what really is going on with arsenic. Now, I have to say some things here. I know that I don't know, but I do belong to magic orders that are lineage to those kinds of things, including Weishaupt and the Hashishin and the Assassin's Creed. And with that said, there's a war going on, and I don't know which side I'm on. How does that work?
I don't know.
I don't either. It's happening, and there I am. Or I'm caught in the middle of a war as a civilian that has been conscripted, and I don't know it yet.
All right, I'll tell you what. I'm going to take your psychiatrist's couch for just a minute when we come back after this break. And I'm going to ask what your thoughts might be regarding a person who feels it's not drugs, it's not alcohol, it's not a health issue, it's not any of those things, none of the usual suspects. But you feel as though you're actually stuck between not necessarily two dimensions, but you're stuck between two realities, almost like being stuck right on the line between two parallel realities. And I just want to get the thoughts of Dr. Richard Allen Miller on that. This is Ark Midnight. I am John B. Wells, delighted to be with you. Please visit caravantomidnight.com. I think you may find there's something there that interests you. Please stand by. We shall return shortly. That's right. Take Back Revolution, baby. It's on right now in case nobody's noticed. And by the way, the thing Dr. Miller mentioned about giant skeletons. Well, Bradford County, Pennsylvania, 1882, General McKean, while digging a cellar, came upon a rock surface. When he struck the rock, it gave forth a hollow sound. The capstone or coverstone broke and fell into a vault. It was a sepulcher that was 9 feet in length and 2.5 feet in width and 2 feet deep. A giant skeleton lay inside it, 8 feet and 2 inches, measured by Dr. Williams from Troy, Pennsylvania. The bones were soft and crumbled easily, but the teeth were sound and flawless. There were two of these sepulchers, and a grown pine tree was growing out of that, measuring 3 feet in diameter, which testifies that these were ancient in age. In 1822, a careful examination of the sarcophagus revealed it flagged at the bottom, the sides artistically built up, and a flat stone laid at the top. The sarcophagus measured 9 feet in length, 2 feet 6 inches in width, and 2 feet deep. Could be the Nephilim, yes? They didn't go into a description of the teeth, just said they were flawless. We'll take a quick break and come right back. Promise. This is Ark Midnight.
The question is, do you really want to know? If you do, join the Caravan to Midnight at caravantomidnight.com. Now, more Ark Midnight with John B. Wells.
All right, we now return. We have returned. We are the returned. So what about that, Dr. Miller? I'm just curious. Now, I realize you haven't had a chance to dissect my brain, either, literally or otherwise. But
no, thank you. But I'm in forensics. Yeah, there it is.
No, that doesn't seem like it would suit you. But seriously,
it's alive. It's alive. Yeah. Well, I can tell you that because of what I've done in my past and history, I can tell you that even with the most rigorous of science disciplines, I'm here to tell you most things are not knowable. It doesn't even work that way, like God. It's not about knowing. It's, in fact, knowledge by Castaneda in all his writings with the Secrets of Don Juan and Teachings of Don Juan. It was always, remember, the Nagual was the unknown. It was not knowable, and Tonal was knowledge. It was called illusion. Now, if you work with those concepts, what it means is that the more you go into the future, for example, Occam's razor, here we go. The more you go into the future, you seemingly gather more knowledge. But the more knowledge you have creates more questions.
Yes.
Then what does that mean?
I don't know.
Well, there it is. Exactly. That's a good response. You don't know. That's the right response, even in metaphor, like Gregory Bateson. What is your metaphor? But to serve your paradox. And so you have a pair of ox out in the meadow.
Oh, boy.
It is the concept of Babel and trying to find aesthetics in information. And that's Avram Moles. The book is called Aesthetic Perception and Information Theory. He's a little-known French mathematician. He's brilliant. And that book has recently been translated, so it's accessible. And it is the concept of redundancy and what makes the dolphin language more efficient, for example, than the mother language of Hebrew, Old Hebrew. With mother languages, that language is had parts of the Bible that used sound and words. It was called the Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Formation. And when you talk about the Mummy, the new movie, and capstones of the pyramids, and the fact that Cleopatra went down the Mississippi River and the Colorado looking for copper, suggests technologies we do not have in this present universe. I've seen how dance and movement change space-time. That's Whirling Dervish. There is a movie, Meetings with Remarkable Men movie, and there's a dance scene where there are 17 Whirling Dervish doing a cadence step, precision stepping that reminds me of a rodent coil. 3-6-9 ratio. And the fact that Gabriel Roth it can change space-time with jazz dancing, and she studied under Kate Bush. Kate Bush was under Kenneth Anger, and these are technologies that used to form smoke signals and the uses of hand gestures in Chinese to change space-time. They call those mudra. It's a form of magic. And you see it in Conan with the alchemist, Chinese alchemist that runs with Conan, and he does his little hand gestures and makes a bunch of grunting noises like Bruce Lee. Meow, boom. And something supposedly changes. That's what a mudra is. And what you're doing It's like a scalar weapon. If you have a light shining on your hands, you have a light show going on with demons, your shadow. That's what in psychology is called the demon or projection of the shadow. Now, when you go after banishing these kinds of creepy entities on astral levels, lesser planes than you, do they feel anger? How could they? How does a shadow feel anger that you step outside of the sun so it no longer exists? It's a metaphor in the way you look at what's going on in the universe. And at one time, in a previous epochs, they used sound and movement to change space-time. I have seen ghost dance. I have seen Macumba and how that works. And so I'm writing about that as tools that we could incorporate from some of the older Bibles, Caravan Bible, the ones used by Mark and Luke, and the others. I don't understand these texts as well as I might. I'm a Hermetic Kabbalist. That's what I do. I'm like Azadi. I try to use the Tree of Life as a tool for filing systems. When I have something I don't understand, I'll use correspondences. Liber 777. I'll use correspondences to relate one thing to another. That's what we now call numerology. But, where the numbers like 666 comes from out of the Bible. Now, this is a technology that was old school in 19th century. Golden Dawn used it. Into the 20th century, Crowley went in a different direction using sex magic, or what they call the Mass of the Holy Ghost, having to do with thought forms and creating them using emotional content. And that's why I'm now going to say you have to be very careful about the thoughts you choose to entertain, because that's how you create your end of days and your aliens.
That is really strong.
Oh,
I mean, I need to protect all of it.
It that way.
But you'll know that punchline.
Yeah, well, the bottom line is that God, our God, is Kether, and there he is. And is it Yahweh or is it Yad-Heh-Vah-Heh? Because somehow those two seem differently than each other. One's rational and very uptight, and the other one's more like a father. And then above the tree, you have Ein Sof, and Ein Sof Ur, and that's Bob Dylan. And everybody's got to serve somebody.
Yeah.
Now, even the Anunnaki and all these different hybrid forms of ant-men and other kinds of biological things around men, and now we're dealing with machine and transhumanism. Cyber City and William Gibson crowd. And if you thought your tattoo crowd was weird, wait till you see where we're going with Blade Runner and how that plays. So it all starts with imagination, because we did not have a 3D printer until Star Trek had a replicator.
Oh boy, this is amazing. This is going in directions I didn't anticipate. Although when I talk to you, I know it's going to get beyond the conventional.
I'm trying to impress on you the importance of training the mind. That's why all saints throughout history have stressed the importance of meditation. And I use toys, catch up there quick. Use brain drivers and biofeedback, control your heart rate and pulse. When you start taking conscious control of your autonomic functions, like allergies, other responses, now that is the evolution of consciousness. And learning how to use all these different tools in your toolbox, like tweaking and paranoia. It's like one's a ball-peen hammer and the other is a Ford hammer. You don't use the Ford hammer very much because it knocks out big dents. Wham! And the ball-peen hammer is to do the fine copper work. So it's like we have tools in a toolbox, and rather than be shunning them, I have a friend that just has a brand new book out, Psychedelic Healing, by William Goldsmith, and Neil Goldsmith. He's up in New York. He's got a bunch of PhDs. He's a friend of mine, and he's saying the promise of ethnogens for psychotherapy and spiritual development, because now we're moving to other planes besides the physical, which is physics. And meta means beyond, which is basically beyond physics, where your worldview is broader than the physical plane, and the physical plane is a special application.
The physical plane is a special application.
Yeah, like space-time isn't real.
Okay.
And gravity doesn't exist. The Earth just sucks.
Gotcha.
You know, the old graffiti thing.
Yeah.
There's lots of different ways. I'm just kidding. There's lots of different, well, I don't want to get too serious here, man. What's happening now is that we are learning the fact that when a groupthink happens, kumbaya, that things change. It works when you have a group of people sitting around there saying, you've got cancer. What happens to you?
No, you don't get better.
Well, is it true?
No.
Well, yeah, or not, like voodoo. It has to do with what you buy into or not.
Mm-hmm. I get
and
it.
You're the one that makes it happen, not the action itself. That's where it's at. And so haunting basically is a kind of haunting or poltergeist, where we'll come back to the original thing we talked about, is a death that has been trapped in matter, hasn't been allowed to go home. At the moment, and the moment just after death, there is a 3.2 ounce weight loss in the body. What's that about? What does that mean? Well, Sir Roger Penrose, my mentor at Princeton, said that it is structured water in a microtubule that goes home to the multiverse. And guess what? You do that every night with specific dreams. That means, or would suggest, that certain dreams have more real content than your conscious waking state does.
It's not just a dream. It's a real thing.
That's correct.
Wow. That is amazing.
It's like, and you have choices. That's Zen Gardner. People have ostracized him because he was historically part of the Children of God, but in fact, ultimately, I found Zen Gardner to be a better writer than me. I was learning things from him. So I'm very impressed with him. He's no longer in the play because of what happened. Public opinion, that's the way it plays. They're trying to do it with me, you, Alex Jones, whatever. But Zen Gardner said, and he's quoting from the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the one that Timothy Leary also used, when he says, the last grand illusion, you are given a choice at the moment of death. And you have the tunnel of light or the blue light. And there it is. Read it and weep. And while that's why they're going to call this guy the last pope, we're coming into an age of awareness where people are waking up and realizing that this, as we call reality, is a dream. And it's a number of dreams. And we've been here before. The Clovis, which was 5,000 years before the Hopi, leading to the Hopi, they had spaceflight. They just confirmed it. And they crawled out of a cave. And down in the Field of Dreams, the Cave of Dreams, the one in France, a bison on the wall, and the anthropologist says, yeah, the caveman drew that. And closer inspection, the dots around the eye constitute a star map. And that's a lean case, honey. Sorry, someone's trying to call me, and they don't know I'm on the air with you, so sorry
Gotcha.
about that. Yeah, it's okay.
Uh-oh.
We're back. Yeah, the deal is that the Cave of Dreams suggests that they had spaceflight because they knew about star constellations. And if you go to a cave that's further south in France, that bison has the star map in reverse, which means they witnessed it from space. Down in Popo, where they're now unearthing where the Clovis lived, that city is bigger and better built than New York City.
Is that a fact?
I've been there. I saw it. It's unbelievable. What you will see, and just in Popo, just down there by the volcano, I mean, it's unbelievable. And they're doing an expedition here, and then way over there. No, it's all one thing, one city. And the Hopi sing about it as their medicine, songs and dances, the historical enemy-mind concept of, oral tradition, singing, medicine. That's what American Indians are about. And the Koryak go back 2,000 years, even further. They go back 7,000 years. Oh, and guess what they're saying now? The stars in heaven have changed. That means there's been a physical pole shift.
Doc, I got to get out more. I really do.
There's something more going on here. And I know I don't know. And do you think that NBC or CBS is going to tell me?
No.
Why would they want to do that?
Yeah.
And Plan B is after, nobody likes Trump. Everybody's against Trump, and Putin is a criminal. But ripping off Russia and all that. However, Putin has done more for Russia than any leader in their history.
He's a choir boy compared to Clinton.
Well, then let's go to page 2 on that. He's a nationalist, like Trump is.
Yep.
And so what they offered us was a criminal or a 4-year-old brat child. Somehow the brat child won the election. It was a disgrace. Either way, who knows?
Do you really think that? I don't think that at all. I think there was just a matter of styles, and the left is getting what they've been giving for a while. And it's like, ow, that hurts. It's like,
the left and the right, and the Republicans and Democrats are the same wings on the. There are two wings.
Well,
I couldn't
agree more. I couldn't agree more.
Okay,
but when you consider the Republicans don't like him either, that just delights me because he must be doing something right.
So here's the bad news: they're gonna try to discredit him like they're doing Alex Jones. They're going to try to make him look like
I keep hearing that name come up on this program. And listen, let me tell you something right now for the record. Alex Jones, his site scrubbed a thing just last week there where he said, they took us to war that killed millions of people over the years, and that doesn't mean that I hate the parents of Sandy Hook, and I'm pretty sure that happened because we have mass murders do occur. 2 minutes later, it was taken off the site, and one of the caravanners rescued it. So next week, we're going to play that so that everybody makes sure. Look.
Good for you. That's good.
I mean, if this guy's real, then great.
Assassinate Trump. And when they try to assassinate him for not playing the game, because he's a nationalist trying to feather his own buckets, whatever, what he is doing is not playing their game, and they're going to try to make an attempt on him. And I have done other radio where I've had a whole bunch of disorganized vets call in and say, and that's when it'll be civil war. And you can't imagine what a combat vet can do when they're uptight.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm sure that's true. Yeah.
And guess what? That's Plan B, because it's easier to rule a group of small countries or provinces over one gangly one.
Yeah. Well.
And so either way, it's not going to work for us. And the same olds are going to happen.
Wait a minute. When you say it's not going to work for us, what do you mean by that?
Well, if they shoot Trump or they don't shoot Trump and there's civil war or there's not, I don't remember, though, civil war ever being very civil.
No. It
was turning brother against brother.
Right. Well, yeah.
So, I mean, what is that about? And I'm here to say, voice of reason is maritime law. Captain and commander of your own property. And that's probably how it's going to play.
Now, what do you...
Knock on wood.
What?
And 10 to 21 will come in next, and I don't know. I am concerned.
Well, now, when you say maritime law, I mean...
It's the way you run your flag. I don't report to anybody above me.
Ah.
And in court of law, the flag is hung this way or it's hung that way.
That doesn't sound very mutual, does it?
No. And which one do you want? Maritime law? That's why you're an American.
Mm-hmm.
You're not supposed to be ruled by your government.
Well, that's right.
The government is there to serve your need.
Yeah. You know what?
Law enforcement is the same, to serve and protect or to coerce and threaten.
Yeah. The only thing is there was a presumption that the individual citizen was sort of hacking it on their own. They were getting things done. They were productive.
Yeah. Look at you and your difference between when you were at Caravan and now and before when you were coast to coast.
Yeah.
John, you've been muzzled, just like everything else.
Well, there's always Iceland.
You know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And I was there. I saw it happen, and I'm watching it doing it to me, and there's nothing I can do about it.
Isn't it strange? People really don't believe that. They're like, oh, you're just trying to, I've been saying this quite a bit lately, you're trying to find relevance, trying to make yourself relevant by making yourself look like you're a target. But people are being made into targets.
I have $900 worth of food stamps.
You do?
Yeah. And guess what? I qualified. That's the creepy part. With my intellect and my ability in writing, why is that? All my books are good. Why has sales dropped to zero? How's that work?
I don't know.
Well, I do.
Well, I mean, yeah, I do.
That's why I'm doing audio. That's how the music industry fought Amazon.
Yeah.
Live music. So I'm doing audiobooks, and that's the way I'm going to go at it. And I can tell you that I don't know how this is going to play. Europe, you can't ship anything to Europe.
You can't ship any. Do you know? I'll share something with you. Recently, I did I may get the producer in trouble. I may get the producer in trouble. No, I'm not.
Oh, don't. We'll do this privately. How's that one sound?
Yeah.
Let people wonder.
There's a well-known organization that serves the interests of young men, okay? And you get a uniform with that. Okay, I'll leave it there. And I did a narration for them. And somebody there inside the apparatus decided they would try and take a look at caravantomidnight.com. And guess what? Their company servers wouldn't let them access caravantomidnight.com. The message was, wow, you must be talking about some pretty heavy stuff over there. And my response was, yes, very heavy, like Jupiter-grade density in some cases. All right, we'll carry on with Dr. Richard Allen Miller. I want to know if he really is, in fact, not Dr. Richard Allen Miller, but if, in fact, he is Dr. Hugo Strange. We'll get into that in a minute. Thanks for being on board, Ark Midnight. Hang on. Oh, yeah. I saw this license plate frame one time, and it said, my favorite Beatle at the top. And at the bottom it said, is dead. And I thought, oh, that's a kind of a letdown. It's like, well, that's two of them now. Two band members gone from The Who, two band members gone from the old Beatles. And the 50th anniversary of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band this month. Unbelievable. The one that it was just awful watching Brian Wilson being interviewed and he made this comment that Sgt. Pepper's nobody could ever have anticipated something like that. It was just like and he just like turned away from the camera like it was just too dreadful to behold. Those guys are something else. And most of the Beatles songs sounded very much like the Plastic Ono band you're hearing now until George Martin got hold of it, and then it became this magnificent thing. Well, in chatting with Dr. Miller offline while the commercials were rolling, I asked him, are you comfortable with speaking some opinions regarding geopolitics and like that? He said, well, I'm not an expert. I have opinions, but I'm not deep into that. I excel mostly in science and metaphysics and so forth. But yeah, we'll talk about it. So why don't we? There's no telling where it will lead. Maybe even some new thoughts. I think we could use some new thoughts and maybe even a couple of new ideas. So let's get through this little thing and then resume with Dr. Richard Allen Miller. Semi.
It's not a programming glitch, nor some science you don't understand. It's Ark Midnight with John B. Wells.
Thank you very much, my invisible friend. Well, I'll tell you what, we'll get to geopolitics in a minute. But Dr. Miller is about to come out of the lab. He wrote, come out of the closet, but I'm thinking come out of the lab as the real Dr. Strange by introducing 3 of 15 new audiobooks, each a full course in metaphysics, 8 to 9 weeks each. Each audiobook will include a download library of special and rare manuscripts used as references for each course. These courses on metaphysics were done from 1990 to 2001, when PC Link became AOL. IES, Interactive Educational School, was out of Humboldt University and was the first online school with valid college creds. He worked directly with Mark Hulme and setting up AOL's original download libraries. This is the origin of texting, when computers were first being used with bulletin boards, otherwise known as BBSs. And he also plans to update those original courses with new courses and seminars using local and regional sources, including a new set of comics around his life and friends. In Meta 12, for example, he'll discuss cybernetic anthropology from 1997 using Gregory Bateson on the nature of metaphor, and then use Laughlin, McManus, and Diakil's book, Brain, Symbol, and Experience, as a textbook on magic. This is intriguing. What's it all about, Dr. Miller?
Where does one begin? Well, set and setting, let's try that. When you lay out a city like Chicago, it's different than New York City or Washington, D.C. And as a result, the mentat of the city takes on a tribal personality. This is the first constructs. If you put your ghetto here and your supermarkets there, the consciousness is different. And that became a group consciousness, and why the jazz from Chicago is different than New York jazz or Washington, D.C. blues. Taj Mahal with Mokeb. And let me say, when you put musicians together, you get different things, like when you put Jean-Luc Ponty playing with Charlie Clark and Bella Fleck. Now the music takes on a classic form that becomes timeless. And that's what cybernetic anthropology was about. It came out in the 70s when Julia Stillman was doing fields within fields at 777 UN Plaza, and when Dr. Charles Muses was doing the Journal for the Study of Consciousness with Edward Everett Horton and some of the old guard. And I was there when it was happening as a student, soaking it all up, and now I'm ready to unload it as a new way of being. And it's a way of looking at things that allows you to change the movie.
I think the movie needs to be changed here pretty soon. I really do.
Yeah.
Rick, I just want to run this by you. We've known each other for a long time. If anybody deserves doctor as his prefix, it would be you. But we know each other, so I call you Rick from time to time. But look, I don't understand why we're pushing for a war with Russia. I do not understand why Islam is being allowed to flood into Western civilization. And I don't understand why, after these numerous stabbings, bombings, shoot-em-ups, van attacks, truck attacks, baseball bat attacks, throwing...
It's all about, how did Gecko put it in the movie Wall Street? Greed is good. I saw a friend that collects Nazi memorabilia, and he's got this button with Ford Motor Company on it and a swastika. How does that work? Okay, now it's good for business. And whenever an economy is in trouble, we're about to hit a brick wall with the Fed and the rest of this nonsense, Bitcoin, that's how they try to pull us out. Right now, Wall Street is being run by AIs, which means it can't fail by definition. We have no idea what's going on. How did McDuck did it? Scrooge McDuck and Donald Duck. Don't worry, we'll print more. Oh no, that's Dorito corn chip. Sorry.
What did you say about Bitcoin a minute ago?
I said we're going to see. How do you eat silver? Well, colloidal silver might maybe for your go bag as an antibiotic substitute, but trade beads, I was at Ithaca doing graduate work, and we had the Ithaca dollar. That worked great for me. Barter and local is different, and everybody has a place in the scheme of things, including the roach. and cockroach. And how did the Fat Freddy's cat put it with Furry Freak Brothers when the cockroach general's flushing him down the toilet, and he's saying lots more where that came from. It's consumerism has now been shown not to be functional. And greed is not good. And money as a standard for, labor and value between a medical doctor and a lawyer as opposed to a scientist that makes less than either of those two.
Did you go ahead?
No, it's okay.
Did you really just reference Fat Freddy, Phineas, and Freewheeling Franklin?
I sure did. Out of Amsterdam, my favorites, man. Fat Freddy's cat. Absolutely. And Von Bodie, I grew up with these guys. And I, keep on trucking. And I've been there and done that. I'm that old. And now I'm here to tell you, I don't know what's going on. I can tell you that it doesn't feel human.
No, it doesn't. So I guess.
What is that? What is the chemtrail? What do you think that's about? Our aluminum recycling program back in our face?
Well, I think what it is I think that we have nanoparticles that whatever it is they're spraying throughout our little bodies. And I think.
APIs? Did you know that the current research for alien life is in bacteria with a microscope?
Doesn't shock me in the least.
Well, what do you think about that for consciousness with the black slime molds that are thriving now in Fukushima and Chernobyl and are all over everything in the capital?
Please go carry on with this. And not very many people know about this.
Well, you should. It's taking over the world. We are being, in a sense, terraformed in front of our eyes, and we now have life forms we've never seen before washing up Oregon beaches.
Mm-hmm. Life forms. Let's ponder that for a second. Life forms that you've never seen before.
Well, wait till you see the picture of I've got an underground diver riding one of them like a giant snake.
No.
I've got a picture of one. And it's all happening. I sent you that one guy. By accident, I didn't clip his name. I should have, and I didn't. So be very, be on, don't let anybody know that guy's name. But I've got a picture to send you that he forgot to send on my other ones. Wait till you see this picture. And that's a nice one to post. That'll be a nice header for your intro into Strange Tales. That's what we're going to call it, Marvel 100. When Doctor Strange and Nick Fury first came out back-to-back upside down on each other in a comic book, it was Marvel 100, Strange Tales. And I'm about to come out and lay it down because we are now dealing with a level of awareness that even the general public hasn't even been prepped up for yet. And I lock and load. Your very existence depends on it.
The Ministry of Smoke and Mirrors, get it? MSM. They're not covering any of the effects of the massive, continual, increasing destruction of the Pacific Ocean via the triple meltdown, or was it triple or quadruple? Well, let's go with triple. Let's be conservative. Nobody's talking about Fukushima.
Everything's leaking. There's 20 Daiichi-like GE reactors on the New Madrid fault line. Mm-hmm. They're all leaking. Indian Point is leaking. Down in Florida, near Pennsylvania, it's leaking. They're all leaking.
Turkey Point, yep.
So what do you think is going to happen next with 3 Mile Island?
Well, probably the same thing. The problem is they had an emergency recently in Spain.
Yes. And Netherlands.
Go on.
Yeah. Sweden. Yeah.
Sweden too. Yeah.
Yeah. It all is happening around us. Turn the switch off. And once you've done that, there may be the possibility of a seventh epoch.
Let me ask you something. How is it that we wind up with such a high percentage of idiots in government? Why can't we have, this Red Pill Expo?
Well, you talked about Peter's Principle and Occam's Razor. There it is. Read it and weep.
Oh, yeah. I was afraid you were going to reference that.
That's pretty much how it works.
But I know, we know this thing exists, and if we look at it and say, there's validity here, why don't we do something about it? But we don't do anything about it.
Well, That's because it's hard to get up off the couch now with all the Doritos we've been eating.
Oh, gotcha. It's laziness then.
Well, and weight, the weight of things. Oh, Lord, won't you buy me? I mean, look, the whole concept of every man and every woman's going to get a chicken in their pot. Yeah, you're getting the big picture now, man. That's the deal. And that's what Elon Musk is about. Wants to go up and get that big diamond. Can't stand the fact he can't go up there and get it now. It's driving him nuts. They want to mine anything that they can. They've already got tomography, so everything on Earth's pretty much already been identified and gone. That's how the second Bush found the Stargate, tomography. And with that said, I can tell you that nobody has a clue where we are with technology.
Richard, you just blew right past that word, and the word was Stargate. What about Bush and Stargate?
You mean Joseph Isaiah and the Yazidi? Yeah, we knew about that in the 70s. That's a very famous book out of the Vatican, 1919. And guess who's talking about it before, just like you do, before it actually happens with the church talking about it? Be the metaphysicians like Golden Dawn talking about Iwas. Yeah. It's historically starts with people like you and then leads to Jesuits from Rome writing about the secret traditions of the Yazidi. Up in northern Iraq is a group of pre-Christian devil-worshipping. That's impossible. So with that said, what are they talking about? A bunch of demons running in and out of a door. That's where we had our first evidence of something in the 70s when that came out. Joseph Isaiah sent that out in 1919. And if you read very carefully, there is a second gate that has yet to be discovered, and CERN and Fermilabs, which are doing a black and white hole between each other in this lab between Chicago and CERN in Switzerland, is another attempt to create a Stargate. Because you can't go to space, and the next one that Kurzweil et al. Is talking about, it's transhumanism. If we can't go up there by ourselves, we can create a golem.
A golem?
Yeah, an artificial body that we inhabit.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I remember.
That's Dr. Charlotte Bach and her doctoral thesis at the Warburg titled Homo Mutant, Homo Lumen. And I wrote a screenplay for Fox on that after I did X-Files, and that one was called The Magical Child, where it was using Dr. Charlotte Bach's constructs of archetypal encounters where a new human is born. You don't know until chapter 3 that it's not human. It's called a light body, and it needs a golem to inhabit, to function down here in the physical plane. How do they call it in Fifth Element? I'm a meat body. It's like this body that we have is a machine.
This is
extraordinary. It does feel like it with all the titanium I have in mine. I make a lot of noise at night when I move around. I crash. But I try to keep the humor part, because when you realize that this physical world that we're currently enjoying is not really real, you can prove that. There are experiments that show that. That's the so-called matrix that they all refer to. Now, they have computer games now that you can play where they have little puffs of air that hit your back to make you feel like you're being shot. That's from Japan. The AI constructs of integrating machine with human, they've already done those movies with I'll Be Back. Which came first?
Do you think that we are you said we're being terraformed. What exactly do you mean by that? I thought terraforming and terraplaning had to do with the shape of the surface of the Earth, the texture of the Earth. And
biosphere, changing it for some other life form.
Okay.
Like they did in that one movie, They're Here. What was that movie that What's-His-Face did? They had the aliens building the big smokestacks down in Mexico to change the atmosphere so that it would be more suited to this life form that had knees that bent in the other direction. Mm-hmm. I forget that one.
I know what you mean. I can't call it up either.
I can't remember the movie. It was, but that's what's happening. We are right now in the middle of being terraformed, whether it's by New World Order or it's a bunch of aliens and human-like bodies. I don't know. I know that they don't seem very human to me, the way they're greed and lust and things. Those are the deadly sins that constituted the Sumerian constructs of demons. The Lemegeton, or 72 fallen angels like Beelzebub and Ashtaroth, that you will find in the Greater and Lesser Keys of Solomon, those demons are basically qualities in men that were deemed unworthy of men, like anger and lust and greed. And there's a whole bunch of them. And when you look at Babylonian star maps, which is where the sigils came from, using magic squares and their names form a geometry, that is old magic systems that come out of the original Colbrin Bibles, using sound and movement as a way to change space-time. And our technologies today are in what we call taphasia, or fire. And that's what we have: electricity and nuclear radiation, and we're out of luck here.
Well, I'll tell you what, when we come back, I want to get your comments on whether or not the human being is actually being changed against the will of the human being, so that transhumanism and the blending of man and machine becomes mandatory if what's left of the human being is to survive the future that they, with a capital T, are arranging for us. As we carry on with Dr. Richard Allen Miller, I am John B. Wells, and this is Ark Midnight. It's the usual drill. A good time because of a few good tunes and some really good talk. Hang around, we're not done. All right, you are listening to Ark Midnight, coming to you over various channels now, and we welcome everybody to the Ark Midnight family, which is an adjunct to the Caravan to Midnight family. I didn't say this at the beginning of the program, I usually do, but Tuesday through Friday, I am privileged to host Caravan to Midnight. On Monday and Thursday, Dr. David Janda brings Operation Freedom to the Caravan to Midnight platform. Now, that's actually the name of his Sunday show on WAAM 1600 out of Ann Arbor, Michigan. But he's joined the Caravan to do a couple of shows per week. And so when you think about it, there are 8 programs between myself and Dr. Janda: Ark Midnight and Operation Freedom, 2 shows from Dr. Janda during the Monday through Friday week, and then 4 by myself. So I got an idea. Go to caravantomidnight.com and take a look at some of the opportunities that we have presented for your consideration. For example, there's the latest 2 Straight Money Analysis newsletters and a 1-year subscription to Caravan to Midnight for the whopping sum of $80. It's $259 for 4 issues of Joe Meyer's newsletter. You get 3 of them: the one that came out in March, the one that comes out this month, and the one that comes out in September. And you'll love it. You really will. And then Dr. Janda's book, The Awakening of a Surgeon, A Life of Prevention, Health, and Hope, is down there on the right. We have 760 programs in archive right now. So, and we're not a ministry, although some people have said, well, there is an element of that to it. We just roll with Ephesians 5:11, which says, "Take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them." And we do. So join us. We're a family, and we're ready to welcome you as a new member to our family. Caravantomidnight.com. Check it out. And stand by. We'll be right back with Dr. Richard Allen Miller.
You're listening to Ark Midnight with John B. Wells. Now, here is John B.
All right, we now return to our most singular conversation with Dr. Richard Allen Miller. Dr. Miller, I was looking over your Facebook page here, and you've got a lot of really interesting stuff on it. Particularly the one that got my attention, juvenile as it might be, is the robot that turns out 400 burgers an hour, set to take over restaurants. You got Bezos has now bought Whole Foods. Those people are scared to death that drones and robots are going to take their jobs. And frankly, I think their fears are justified, because I think robots and drones are going to take over their jobs. And as more drones and robots take over our jobs, what's the human being supposed to do? Become like what were that bunch that the Morlocks were eating?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that thing.
Yeah, time machine. And, it's going to be an interesting new universe. The CIMAC, science fiction. I read that when I was in 5th grade. It's called City, when man becomes obsolete and leaves the physical world and gives it to the dogs.
I was wondering, did you happen to see that film Interstellar?
Oh, yes, of course.
I thought it was excellent. I'm not so sure that he isn't correct. That maybe...
Well, that is number 6 of all-time correct movies, science fiction movies, that are correct technically. Space Odyssey is number 1. Doctor Strange is number 5, even more than Interstellar.
Wow.
And the so-called Hall of Records, or the Akashic Records of the library.
Well, that's what I'm thinking, Maybe we're not supposed to fix it, the planet, that is. Maybe we're supposed to leave.
Well, it's neither. The thing is, it's about food chain. And right now, change is the rule.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing you can do about that part. It's going to happen. And it's not man doing it. It's the sun. It always has been the sun. That's suspicious observers. Go for it. The thing is, there's something affecting our sun, and that's the part that I wish they would give us more disclosure on. I don't know about the secret space program. I can tell you that this one video I posted about those organisms off the coast, that gets creepier as you go to the end of it, and they start looking up at the sky with infrared, and look what they're mapping that you can't see with the naked eye.
Mm-hmm. Well,
there's something more going on here. And I know that I don't know. And I've got a good imagination, trust me. And I know I don't know. But I'm trying to be very careful with my thoughts so that I make this movie the way I want it.
Yeah. Do you think that maybe we are being... Yeah, I think I said before the break, it seems like a long time ago, but do you believe that the human being is being changed, whether the humans want it to be changed or not, so that we can survive the future or not?
Well, that would be the kumbaya one of, everything happens for a reason.
Right.
Everything leads to something better. Who knows? The shadow knows. And I'm going to make some comics about him. And that's what I'm going to do, is the discovery of this moment. And really what we've all missed is it's not about what the Earth is becoming, it's about the journey. That's the part that if I leave anything more, Simon says you can only go halfway to the door. And everybody focuses on the door. Global warming, whatever. They focus on the wrong part of what's going on. And that's, again, being manipulated by a few individuals with tools like the media, food. They're used as weapons to control group consciousness.
Wow. It doesn't sound good. Is there a bright spot anywhere?
It doesn't have to be bad. In Jungian psychotherapy, control is a fantasy. It's not. They don't have control. They like to think so, and by calling them the elite, flames their ego, makes them feel elite. Good luck with that.
All right.
The Borg. Did you notice on that organism they call it Borg consciousness?
Yes.
Just like in the movies, man. It's going to go downhill from there. Let me tell you.
Yes.
I mean, I can tell you it's going to be a bumpy ride. You better buckle up.
Yeah, that's what I always say. Maybe not always, but mostly. So,
well, you can have fun with it. How did they do it in Armageddon? And the guy got out and said, I'm going to have a front row seat and embrace the horror.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm kidding. It's like we have an opportunity, and it's time to step up. And that's what I'm going to be about with kids. It's pathworking. And I'm going to take, first graders. We have a project we're doing here. It's called the Caterpillar. And originally, this is Steve Miller and his old thing called Pacifica Gardens. You can look it up. It's in Ashland. No, I mean in Williams, Oregon. And the caterpillar is this old bus that's set up with monarch butterfly entomology, talking about the migration pattern of the monarch butterfly. And it goes around to all the grade schools and teaches the kids about butterflies. Oh, gee whiz. I'm taking that nonsense, stripping the bus, and putting a water testing laboratory in it to teach third graders how to run that bus, and they go to the grade schools and show first graders how to test for cleanliness of water with a mobile water testing laboratory in each community as a teaching tool. And then the first grader goes home to show his parents how they do it, because the parents don't know good turds from pork and beans on how to test for cleanliness of water. Just local city water here in Grants Pass has H. pylori, and everybody's on Prilosec, and then the next one is Nexium, and off it goes down the hill with pharmaceuticals. And, you know, it isn't about ulcers. It's about worms in your food. And it's all basic. And the kids are smarter than we are. They're our future. And that's why we have a responsibility to teach your children well. That's a good song to play, just like Moody Blues.
Yeah.
Do a little bit of Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, and teach your children well, because that is going to be the foundation for everything. And right now, the United States is embarrassing. I remember when we were number 6 in the world for elementary education. Now we're down around 20, and used to be the only reason our graduate schools excelled over the world was because of toys, like that collider that's down there where you are, that gravity wave generator. Mm-hmm. And I have to, did you know you had a shape-shifting thing down there? Going to change everything in Houston. Mm-hmm. But, yeah.
Well, I thought the superconducting super collider that was up there around Waxahachie.
There it is. It's right there. Yeah. Houston, we have a problem.
Well, I thought they shut that thing down. Are you telling me that they didn't shut that thing down?
No. It's Washington State University is owned, it's run by Caltech and MIT. No, who's the other one? I forget. It's Illinois. One of them, they're running it, but it's owned by Pullman. And I remember when Dr. Knowles came in from Yale, and I was an undergraduate. I was fortunate to study under him in some graduate courses while I was still doing undergraduate work at Pullman. And that gravity wave generator is an offshoot of some of the work I did with plasma generators. And I can tell you that thing is like the fog. It's going to open and close certain kinds of doors that are going to allow creepy quality in. And there are other things going on here that we don't truly understand, and I get it. And I know I don't know. So who's directing the show? Well, if I'm from an asset as a scientist, it's got to be something that's non-human. And there's only a couple of options there. And that's either AIs that have gone rogue, and there are some third-generation D-waves that are out there without handlers now.
D-waves without handlers?
Yeah. Yes. D-wave technology, Abbotsford, without handlers. That means they're rogue. Yeah. Just like in person of interest. Yeah. Just like predicting crimes. That was starting with the old Jade Helm experiments that they were doing to shake down Jade 2.0 software and for profiling. And they got that down to the point where now it's being deployed in Chicago to predict crimes 28 minutes before they occur. And like I said earlier, the Mossad used it to arrest 400 Palestinians on future crimes.
Man. Now, wait a minute. So this is out of the realm of theory now. This stuff works.
Oh, no, yeah. It's already happening. Already now. That's just the tip of that iceberg. I was going to talk to you about a fusion bomb. We'll do that another time. That, we're talking about tactical nukes with a precision of 1.4 nanometers. No forensics. They can take care of it, like a missing plane, whatever. Those nanofibers are used in everything to reconstruct them and strengthen them. And it's no hard matter to change them from fullerene water to a fusion bomb using deuterium over exclusion zone water. And that's the articles I sent you. Post them. You're welcome. I think people need to know what's happening in our world with technologies they never even dreamed of, and they'll blame it on aliens or more likely Rio. Blame it on Rio. That's what it will do. The Indians did it.
Yes, of course. Yeah. The Russian Indians.
I mean, the whole thing is crazy. And nobody knows. I don't know. If I can simply put together an examination on Judy Wood, and they're right now, today, this week, trying to discredit her and the 9/11, just like they are the Sandy Hook.
Yeah, isn't it amazing? We just had Wolfgang Halbig on last week, and it was absolutely amazing to hear all of the stonewalling that's being done. They won't answer any questions at all. Lenny Posner files a lawsuit against Wolfgang Halbig, but somehow or another, they just won't allow Posner's deposition to be taken.
Isn't it interesting?
Yeah, well, is in my opinion,
and I'm not in a look. They can gerrymander elections now by profiling people. They can change the what do they call those little the district walls, one street at a time, by pattern recognition of the individual face and knowing what he's going to do with his vote before he does.
No, brother.
That's how you get across the so-called electoral college now using AIs. And what they're doing in Wall Street, where it can't fail. Mm-hmm. What's behind door number 4? It's a new car. Who cares? The thing is, it's about consumerism and the thing of what you need to what you want. And that's where the choice comes in. When you're out of toilet paper, it can be really bad. And so it comes, if you go to prison, you'll notice that you still have everything you need, approximately. But if you try to live in the world out here, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm going to lock down and realize that my life is going to be probably saved by my neighbor.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I think you may have a real point there. Now, what is
That's the geopolitics you wanted to talk about, and I'm not knowledgeable. I really am not. I do not know. And I'm not a pseudo-intellect. I don't hang out in politics because I think it's dirty.
Yeah, well, it is.
Oh, you say what they want to hear. You don't do it. That was why I made a distinction, and I'm teaching children, the distinction between ethics and morals.
Yes. Well, you know what? Tell us, what is the distinction between morals and ethics?
And Ducky Mallard turned around and he said, well, an ethical man knows not to cheat on his wife. A moral man won't.
Right. Oh, that makes perfect sense. That's actually pretty good, yeah.
That's the way they did it with NCIS. That's okay. I don't know. I try to walk my talk, and I'm going to tell you that I have now come to believe there are as many different religions as there are human beings, because all roads lead to God, or Rome, whatever. It's like everybody's uniquely different. That's what's so wonderful. And when the Catholic Church turned on their sciences, called them heretics, started burning them at the stakes.
Yeah.
That's where your Illuminati war began.
Very interesting. That's very.
You can read that in Holy Blood, Holy Grail, and the idea that was written by 2 award-winning anthropologists at Princeton and a BBC writer. And Holy Blood, Holy Grail runs it down where the teachings of Christ and the Church of Rome departed and went opposite directions in the year 1000, when Pope Innocent I declared war on the Cathars. To be king of Jerusalem, Emmanuel had to have children. That's canon law since Abraham.
Wow.
And there are documents from Qumran that people don't talk about, but there they are, same airstream validated, that talk about the fact that it was not Emmanuel that was put on the cross, because you don't put the king of Jerusalem on a cross politically. It was his brother Simon. Whether or not that's true or not, I don't know. The second document that came out of the same period suggests that they also gave Simon something to drink to simulate death so they could get him off the cross early. And those were documented and are part of your so-called Dead Sea Scrolls. Now, whether or not, Enoch is going to appear in your Bible or not has to do with Raziel telling Enoch the name of a demon, because the church didn't think you should know that, because when you have the name of a demon, you have control of it. That's a concept, like exorcism. That's why they're constantly, part of their exorcism is to get the demon's name. Once you have that, you've got them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's sort of like knowing it's about jealousy.
Yeah.
Once you've named it, you've containerized it, and now have control of the water. And that's a metaphor for the way we are approaching our constructs of consciousness and our brain. I wouldn't have seen it if I hadn't believed it. I used this a long time ago with you about the aliens. Being a staunch Christian, could you see aliens? Is it possible? No. By definition, you wouldn't have seen it if you hadn't believed it.
Right.
And so those are the doors of perception that we talk about that are opened and closed based on definitions, assumed truths, and axiom postulates and corollaries. The scientific method of trying to arrive at continuity of consistency in the law, knowing that if you do this, that's going to happen. And it doesn't work that way. And why science is no longer going to be physics, it's going to become magic. And that's the art of changing consciousness at will. And by being able to do that with your own conscious, aware volition is, by definition, the evolution of consciousness. That is what it's about, learning how to use all these altered states as tools in a toolbox, not to be feared, but useful in a time when your child is inside a burning automobile.
You are something else. You really are. I got to tell you, Dr. Strange, it's good talking to you.
It's always my pleasure, John. You get me, and you allow me to do it so that it's clearer, and that's what I need to do. The writing is my passion. That's what I would like to be doing. Right now, I have to work for a living, so my writing has put to the back seat. The non-local mind in a holographic universe is ready for press. I'm now looking for some artwork, to make it right. And I've got a bunch of other new things coming out, including the audiobooks. The metaphysics books are to give you a foundation of definitions based on other writers during this century that I deem to be really important, like Gurdjieff.
One last thing.
I think there's the one that all women should read is Esther Harding, and The Way of All Women, or Women's Mysteries. She was a contemporary with Carl Jung, and is a requirement for anyone going to study magic with me, male or female. It's about Eleusinian mysteries.
There are so many things that we can talk about, and one of them is you've identified yourself as a farmer. And we also mentioned food as a weapon. It's been used as a weapon many times, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa. And I think you're suggesting that it might be used as a weapon here. Are you suggesting that it might be used as a weapon here?
Yes.
All right. We're going to save this for our next conversation. In the meantime, everybody, investigate that so that you'll be ready for class the next time it convenes with Dr. Richard Allen Miller. God bless, Rick.
Thank you.
I just love talking to him. He's just a great guy.
I like working with you too, sir.
All right, God bless. Take care.
Bye-bye.
All right, a quick shout out, just one quick shout out to Roy Larner. Yes, the Lion of London Bridge gets his own beer affectionately named Bleep You, I'm Millwall. The beer is reportedly a huge hit in Sweden, and now even people in the United Kingdom want to get their hands on it. So a friend of his, who's a Millwall fan in London, sent a link to an article about Roy. Thought it was amazing, the story of his bravery. Somebody said, Allah, Allah, Allahu, Allahu, and he said, bleep you, I'm Millwall, and live to tell about it. All right, have I told you people lately? I love you. Come join the family. If I suddenly drop off the scope, just come to caravan2midnight.com. You'll find me. God bless.